Welcome to the SportsBar Life. I'm your host, Sri Viswasam. Thank you for tuning in. The SportsBar Life is home to your major event sporting coverage. Today is our 6th show, and after our preview of the AFL Grand Final last week, we turn our attention to motor racing and preview the biggest race of the year on the Australian motorsport calendar, the Supercheap Auto Bathurst 1000. For those not familiar with the Bathurst 1000, it is called the Bathurst 1000 as the length of the race is 1,000 kilometres, where teams of 2 drivers complete 161 laps of the Mount Panorama circuit in Bathurst, New South Wales. In this show, we'll chat to 2 of the drivers taking part in the great race. We'll chat to one of the leading contenders for this year, Cameron Waters, who will lead his Monster Energy Ford Falcon with co-driver Richie Stanaway this Sunday around Mount Panorama. Then we'll chat to a driver making his debut at Bathurst, Garry Jacobson, who will partner former Bathurst winner and Supercars legend Jason Bright in their Mega Fuels Ford Falcon. Garry is the reigning Dunlop Super 2 Series champion. Before we start, to keep up to date with the SportsBar Life, make sure you subscribe to the show on the platform you are listening to this program. We're on iTunes, YouTube, and more. Also, you can follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook at SportsBar Life. First, we chat to Cam Waters, who we were able to speak to this morning ahead of his final practice session around Mount Panorama. Thanks for joining us, Cam. It's great to have you on our show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Oh, no worries. How's the car going so far?
Yeah, it's been pretty good so far. We've been in the top 10 pretty much every session, which is really good. The car's quick on empty or low fuel and then heavy fuel, so you know what it's going to be like in the race. So, for us, it's just keep tuning it and making it better and making sure we're comfortable for Sunday's 1,000 Ks.
Great. So you and Richie Stanaway are heading into this year's race fresh off your maiden V8 Supercars win at Sandown. So how does that feel heading into this weekend's race?
It was awesome to kind of get my first win in the category as a main game driver and to do it at Sandown in front of all my friends and family was sick, and obviously gives me pretty good confidence leading into this weekend. So it's a bit different track and take a few different things from it, but yeah, all in all, it gives you confidence, and confidence is pretty important around this place.
Yeah, for sure. How do you find working with Richie?
Yeah, Richie's really good. He's kind of a lot like me in a lot of ways, pretty chilled and just goes about his racing. He's been really good for me so far, and same size as me, so he sits in my seat and uses my belts and everything. So yeah, it's been really easy so far.
Oh, that's pretty handy. So with the co-driver and driver dynamic, what are each driver's responsibilities when each of you are taking the wheel?
I guess for Richie, it's mostly about getting off the line, keeping the car straight, in a good position, preferably, and then hand it back to myself or the main driver in one piece so you can finish the race with a quick car. So, the co-driver has a pretty big role in the whole thing. Asked to kind of go well, move forward, but don't crash. So, so far, Richie's done a really good job.
In terms of the way you and Richie work compared to, say, all the other teams, do you all work on a similar model in terms of when you rotate turns in the car?
No, that really changes with team to team. So you set the strategy before you're going into a race, and sometimes that can change. So sometimes you start your main driver or you start your co-driver, depending on a lot of things. But, we're not really too sure what we're going to do this weekend yet.
I get you. Yeah, so I guess at this stage where 4 sessions in, you've got another practice and then qualifying later today. What do you feel is important for you to focus on over the next session and going forward?
Next session will be all about setting the car up for qualifying and making sure it's fast. So that's what I'll be concentrating on this next session. And then after qualifying, it'll be all about seeing what the car's like on full tanks and in a race trim. So, that's kind of our plan for the next few sessions.
Mm-mm. And in terms of the track itself, what areas of the track are you putting any particular attention to certain turns or areas that the car might need to be mindful of?
Yeah, we always try and improve our weaknesses. So you do a session, you work out where we're good and bad, and then you improve that. So we know where we're kind of weak at the moment, and we're working hard to fix it.
Okay, cool. And in relation to your last Bathurst, so you and Jack LeBrock finished in 4th position. What can you take from that drive last year into this year's race?
Last year we finished 4th, so we were pretty close to the podium. We kind of knew what we needed to get on the podium and what we needed from the car last year. So you take a lot of those philosophies and things we learnt and implement them into this year's Bathurst Assault. So so far we've done that, and so far it's gone okay.
Great. And in terms of the rest of the field this year, who are you expecting to feature as your major rivals are?
It's a little bit hard to kind of pick a winner at the moment because there's so many fast cars out there, and this race throws up so many variables through the race. So people can crash, have problems, whatever. So it always kind of changes. But I think it'll be the same old culprits up the front, and whoever's probably top 10 in the championship will probably have a good shot at winning it.
Yeah, for sure. And as far as your goals and expectations ahead of the race, is there anything there you could share with us?
We're expecting to try and go well, finish, and if everything goes well, I think we can be up the front or hopefully have a shot at winning it. Fantastic.
And just before we go, how can our listeners keep up to date with all things Cam Waters?
I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, so you follow one of them or even head to my website. So give me a like or a follow.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm sure our listeners will. And thanks for your time, Cam. It's been great to chat, and we wish you and Richie all the best for this weekend and in particular Sunday.
Sweet, thanks for having me.
Great to touch base with Cam just before he took to the track today. And for those not aware, Cam and Richie qualified in 4th position in Friday's qualifying, which sees them through to the top 10 shootout on Saturday to determine who will take pole position for Sunday. Now we chat to Garry Jacobson, who'll tell us about his career in motorsport, provide his take on the great race and his drive this weekend. Thanks for joining us, Garry. It's great to have you on the show ahead of this year's Bathurst 1000.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pretty special moment for me in my career at the moment, getting to compete for the first time in the main game with Prodrive and Jason, and coming off a good year last year. It's good to get a reward to do my first enduro campaign.
Yeah, it's certainly exciting. You are one of the rising stars on the V8 scene. Can you give us a bit of detail about your racing background?
Yeah, I'll probably go for a fair while, though. Do you want the full story or the short story?
Whichever one you reckon.
Yeah, okay. Well, the reason why I began racing was because of my father. He raced in Speedway. I used to follow him around a fair bit when I was 7 years old, and he raced in A modified production. And when I was about 12 years of age, it was time to pick a sport. I was doing football, basketball, tennis, footy, and go-karting. I started to get into that at New America Go-Kart track at home where I live in Shepparton. Did that for 3 years and won a national title in junior national heavy. And it was a really good time to progress into circuit racing. In 2009 was when I started, because there was 2 scholarship programs available to get picked for, and I applied for both of them. And I got selected as a CAMS young gun to race in Aussie racing cars. I did 1 year there, just racing with Phil Ward, the Ward family that began the Aussie racing car category, and just learned all the tracks. Got one race win at Phillip Island in the pouring rain, and that was enough to progress to the next stage in my scholarship program, and I went into the Rising Star program, also run by CAMS, and did 2 or 3 years in that, and eventually finished third in the championship, in the Formula Ford Championship, and basically I was at that stage of my life where I was year 12, and I just finished my schooling, and I wanted to, get some advice from people about what I needed to do to be able to get into V8 supercar racing, because it's obviously expensive. First, you can't just come with talent. You need to, have a lot of sponsorship backing. And I decided not to go to university. I went to work for Michael Ritter at Sonic in Bayswater, moved away from home the day after I finished my last year 12 exam. And, worked really closely with Sonic and Rodney, Rod Jane, Bob Jane's son from Bob Jane T-Mart. They gave me my first shot, and a few years progressed on, got some results on the board, and then moved to Prodrive and got my first championship win only last year. So, yeah, that's the short story, basically.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Well, I guess, you're seeing the fruits of all your hard work pay off here and winning last year in the Dunlop Series, and now into Bathurst. So looking at this year's race, you're teamed up with Jason Bright, a former Bathurst winner and a legend of the supercars. How does it feel to be driving together?
Yeah, it was unexpected at the start of the year. Like I really was keen for an opportunity last year, but I hadn't really got enough good results on the board. And after winning the championship last year, I knew that I might have had a chance to race with either of the drivers at Prodrive, but with Jason moving into the team this year, I didn't really expect it, and it all sort of happened in the space of 2 weeks. So I sort of introduced myself to him when we had our first introduction to the team, and with Mega Fuels Racing coming on board as well, that was an exciting time for Prodrive, having a new driver, a new sponsor, and a new co-driver with me coming on board, and we've just all gelled really well. I suppose I've got to take a notepad with me every time I talk to Jason, because he did used to run his own team with Brytech, so he probably self-engineers a lot. He's got a young engineer teamed up with him, Sam Potter. It's his first year engineering a main game car in the main game, but he works really closely with his engineer, and I sort of just stand in the, I'm the third man. I sort of stand to the side and just listen a lot, and I kind of write down 1 or 2 things that I learn each day, and then as the year goes on, you find you've learned quite a lot. So he's probably helped me more in terms of just understanding the cars, and he's a really good guy, and I get along with his family well as well. Even the races where Super 2's not racing at Perth or Darwin, I actually flew up and just, sat next to him in the debrief sessions after he jumps out of the car to talk to the team, and yeah, I've just been his shadow basically, but enjoying the experience of meeting Jason and his family and getting the most out of his knowledge is really helping me propel myself into supercars, hopefully one day to be in the main game. So, yeah, it's been a great relationship.
Yeah, that's terrific. Well, you did race together at Sandown in the first race of the Enduro Cup. How did you find that?
Yeah, it was a challenging one for me. We had a bit of a mechanical issue, unfortunately, halfway through my first stint with a damper. So, not much time to fix it on the fly during the race. Just sort of did what I could. And, the speed at the start of my stint was good. I was within about, 3/10 of, the fast guys. But I started to really struggle with that, with the damper going wrong. But, it was still good to race for the first time, with a fuel window. I've never really had to do that before in the Dunlop series or Formula Ford or Aussie cars. So did that, tried to get the most out of that. And, I learned a lot out of that race. But, it was just a little bit unfortunate with the result. But at Bathurst, this weekend, I've been in the top 10 in my first practice session when I had some good tyres. So I know my full potential at the moment is, within the top 10 of the co-drivers. So for my first outing so far, I'm enjoying it. And doing well speed-wise. Just want to do a bit better with the results, so I'm sure they'll come.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so you did mention in the first session you were in the top 10 with the tyres going well. So how are you finding the car so far in the times you've been driving it?
Yeah, it's good. It's a pretty close. The car's pretty relative to the Super 2 car that I drive. They're both Ford FGXs. We both run Car of the Future now. The development of the main category probably goes a bit quicker, obviously, because that's where the powerhouse of the engineers are with Nathaniel Osborne and the experienced guys like Adam DeBore working with Chaz. Those guys are all coming up with new things to try each time. So the car's handled subtly different at stages, but I think that the way that Super 2 has brought the car of the future in, jumping out of a Super 2 car into a main game car isn't as big a step now, which is really good for me. I remember back in the day where people used to be in the FG, and then they had to jump out of that car into the FGX, and the car was 2 seconds quicker. So I remember seeing, I think my lap times last year at Bathurst was a 2:06.5, and so far I did a 2:06.8. So I've actually been quicker in my Super 2 car, but as I start to do more miles as the weekend goes on and you get better tyres as the weekend goes on, I'm sure I'll get quicker anyway.
Oh, that's great. Well, just to give our listeners a bit more of an idea as to your racing schedule this year, can you just give a bit of a background as far as, which races you're competing in, and in case they weren't aware of how it works with the V8s?
Yeah, okay. Well, the first thing to address is that the Super 2 Championship is separate to my co-driver roles. So for my Super 2 Championship, I've got one round left at Newcastle, which is going to be the final round of the V8 Supercar Championship. And that'll be in a couple of months. But in terms of my primary roles at the moment, the co-driver championship, or the Enduro Pertec Cup, only goes for 3 rounds, and that's the rounds that the co-drivers are involved in with the main game drivers. We've had one round already at Sandown. We're here this weekend at the Bathurst 1000, and in 2 weeks' time we'll be going to Gold Coast for the last round of the Enduro Pertec Cup. So this weekend at Bathurst, 2 weekends' time I'll be racing at Gold Coast, and then I'll have one race left for the year in my Super 2 car, and that's a 6-round championship. So we've already had 5 rounds in the Super 2 car. But in terms of racing for me, after Newcastle, my year won't end. I'll be jumping back into a 410 sprint car on the dirt. I'll be racing up at Archerfield, at Brisbane and Toowoomba on the speedway tracks there. So I race with the team called GW Racing in the 410. So it's just a bit of a way to mix your skills up, and you see guys like Shane Van Gisbergen, racing drift cars, GT cars, and things like that. So I wanted to give sprint cars a go late last year, and GW Racing have been very kind to me to be giving me another car for the end of the year. So sprint car season will kick off as soon as December comes.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So I guess the racing doesn't stop.
So the racing certainly doesn't stop. I'm a young racer at heart, I suppose as a young kid, racing go-karts 40 weekends out of the year. Dad was, pretty tired and worn out at the end of the go-karting evolution for me. But, I'm at that stage in my career where I can actually afford to do it now, long term. I've got good sponsorship backing with Megafuel coming on board. They're actually sponsoring the sprint car as well. And, I think, probably getting the benefits now out of winning my first championship has taken it was 4 years it took me to, get to that stage of getting good results. But then as the results come, you can actually start to race without costing, your family any money. No one has to take any bites out of their paycheck anymore. So, in a good stage of my career at the moment, and I'm not going to knock back any racing. I'd, rather be racing a sprint car in the summer than, out there drinking and partying. I just find that I have just as much fun on the dirt and learning more, working with people that work in the speedway industry. They're really smart as well, the guys in the main game are very smart people with the engineers that you have involved. I think it's 12 engineers all up at Prodrive, but the speedway engineers, those guys are pretty cluey as well, and sometimes you can apply the experience from, dirt and bitumen you could be sliding around on the dirt and it's slippery, but, when it rains at Phillip Island this year and there was 2 laps to go, we were on slick tyres and I didn't really have any time to come into pit for wets. We just had to drive around the track with our slick tyres while the rain was pouring at Phillip Island. And that's actually how I got my first race win of the 2017 Super 2 Championship. So I give a lot of credit to, trying different cars and racing on different surfaces to that, because I used to in my early couple of years used to be quite sensitive in the rain, which a lot of people are, and you don't want to crash the car because you don't own it and that sort of thing. But after just one summer season racing on dirt, I'm a lot more confident now in the wet, and it's all thanks to the sprint car racing I've been doing. So
yeah. That's really good. It's good to see how it all crosses over. With the Super 2s, so you've got one more race. How are you positioned in the standings with the Super 2s?
Yeah, it hasn't been a strong year for me in terms of my results in the championship. We've got race wins and we've got 2 pole positions, all pole positions in qualifying, but just had a couple of setbacks. We had a tyre let go at Phillip Island down the main straight when everybody was having their tyre dilemmas in the main game. We were actually one car that did it in the Super 2, so we're a bit unlucky there. And Townsville, we were on for a good weekend, was coming third, and then we had a damper failure. So I've taken a few hits this year with the championship. I'm currently sitting 6th, but probably more potentially 3rd or 4th.
Okay.
Look, the guys do a fantastic job at Prodrive. As you're developing parts and developing the cars, sometimes these things happen. So it's not through any fault of the team. It's just through trying to push the boundaries and go faster, which we've had a really fast car. We're probably, the fastest qualifying car of the year in the Super 2. But, just had a few setbacks, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We'll be looking to get a podium at Newcastle and try and show off some speed, because going to Newcastle, it's going to be, an even playing field. No one's going to have any knowledge of the circuit. It's a new circuit, and it looks like it's going to be, like a normal street circuit would be. It clips all pretty tight, big curves and things like that. But because it's a new circuit, I think they've tried to revolution the, I suppose they want to develop street circuits to be flowing as well now, like Townsville. So it's going to have a little bit of both. So for the drivers, it's going to be interesting. I think there'll be a few egos going around for who can be the quickest in the first practice session, which will be good fun.
Oh, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And going back to Bathurst now, being a co-driver to Jason, how does your role work within the race structure for the team?
A lot of it's just preparation for me. The first couple of laps I go out, I'll always be roading a set of tyres for Jason before his qualifying session, or betting a set of rotors or pads for him, because when Jason jumps in the car, we want to be able to be as fast as we possibly can, because he understands the car the best and he has the most experience. So a lot of it's just, I guess you call it just housekeeping rules for me at the first 5-10 minutes of my practice sessions. But in terms of the racing, we're working really hard with me on, saving fuel and things like that, because it's such a long day at Bathurst, and if you can save, the extra litre or so a lap, and you'll have a late safety car, I think it'd be good to try and minimise as much time as we can in the pit lane, with fill time. So it's pretty challenging for me at the moment. Like it's, you got to be as fast as you possibly can, but also saving fuel down, before each corner, getting off the throttle a little bit earlier and making sure you're not on 100% throttle the whole way down the straight. So it's good. Like, it's a good challenge for me. I haven't had to do it before, but I'm doing okay at the moment. And I think the main thing as a co-driver as well is, it's my first year. I'm expected to, hold my position wherever I start. Sandown, I started, I think, 21st, and I got the car up to 17th in my first stint, so I was pretty happy with my start. And that's the same thing I got to do at Bathurst. Hopefully Bridie can get it up a little bit higher in qualifying. I think, he's a genuine top 10 driver in my opinion. So if we can get it up in the top 10 for qualifying, just get out there, hold my position and keep the car in one piece and bring it back to him. That's my goal.
Okay, yeah, that's quite fascinating. I guess being a driver on your own in the Super 2 series and then being a co-driver in the Enduro series, is there a mental adjustment that has to be made in terms of the way you approach the track?
Oh, a little bit. You don't want to put the car on the ragged edge every single lap because you're handing the keys over to Jason, and he needs to be able to risk the car in that last stint. It's such a long day at Bathurst, and even his first stint, I'm sure we're not going to try and race on the ragged edge every single lap, every single corner, because there's just not a lot to gain at the first 3 or 4 stints of the race. Once the last 2 stints come in, as long as you're on that lead lap and you're in the top 10, anything can happen. So that's our philosophy. We kind of want to maximise at the end of the race. We want to have a nice straight car. There's a lot of guys that have won Bathurst with bent cars, and that's probably been more through luck, but we want to try and control our own luck and make sure as long as we're holding our position, we've got good fuel on hand. I think that's more of our style of strategy. But I think we can still race hard and reasonably fast and do your 207s and 208s in the races. But the guys that are doing 205s, 206s now, we've seen 6 red flags already from experienced drivers like Tim Slade, shunting it in practice and those guys. So we don't want to be one of those guys in the first 2 stints of the race at Bathurst that misses out. So yeah, that's our strategy.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So, in terms of competing with the other co-drivers on the track, do you think there's like a separate race going on within the main race between the co-drivers?
Oh, in my opinion, for me, not really, because it's such a mixed way to look at speed between drivers in practice. You could have someone going out on a green set of tyres that looks, like a superhero in a co-driver session, and another driver that's in P20 like Paul Dumbrell or myself might not have got a green set of tyres. So I think once you basically look at your race speed when everybody's on good sets of tyres, and we have like a bit of a thing at Prodrive. It's basically a bit of a lap time matrix where they look at all your fastest laps together with good tyre quality and compare it to the other co-drivers at the end of each round. And then they give you a bit of a review of where you're at and what you need to work on. So we sort of compare ourselves to we're lucky we've got 4 cars in main game, so that means 4 co-drivers. So there's a lot of talent within us and our own team, so we sort of just compare to one another. But I suppose people are competitive. You don't get this far in racing without being competitive. So you do compare yourself a little bit, but you just have to keep yourself calm sometimes, because sometimes it's impossible to do a 205 when you're on a 200k old tyre. So
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
no, cool. Yeah, so in terms of driving the Ford Falcon FGX, your vehicle, is there a rivalry between the Fords and Holdens? Is that still prominent within the V8 game?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's more rivalry between the top 3 teams. I'd say your Triple Eight versus your Prodrive or Penske. I'd say those guys are good at what they do because they want to be number one, and if there's a team that's threatening your position for getting podiums, you tend to build a rivalry. I remember the first time ever at Prodrive, we got to the test day and we were comparing who had the loudest speakers down pit lane. So there's a bit of fun that goes on. I think it just makes the sport interesting. I think the fans enjoy it as well. You want to see the top 2 or 3 teams fighting it out every day, and you don't want a predictable season like you would see in Formula One where, Mercedes have dominated the last 2 years. You want to see, at least 5 or 10 drivers eligible of winning races. So, yeah, it's been interesting. At the start of the year, I saw Penske's speed and I thought, this is going to be a lockout. But, Prodrive has started to get really quick now. They're trying new things with their engines and trying new things with their car. And now we're starting to challenge for race wins. And Cam Waters did a good job and Chaz have been doing a good job. They got a good podium. And even Canto and Mark, they've been really consistent at Bathurst. They've been pretty quick. So Prodrive's bringing the rivalry back. It's good to see Prodrive up the front, because when they're up the front, they bring that, Ford, I suppose what you were saying, the rivalry between Ford and Holden back, which is good to see.
Yeah, for sure. And with Prodrive, you've got the four teams, as you said. having the 4 different cars on the track, do you look out for each other a bit? Is that something that gets thought when you're driving?
Yeah, we do, especially in practice. I think once racing happens, I've never really had to worry about treating teammates differently. I think, from my opinion, even when I do race hard, I don't really hit other cars on the track. You get up next to them door to door and that sort of stuff and, have a good crack. But I sort of just treat everybody the same on the track. I think it's good with the 4 cars because, you can have 4 completely different setups. So in this, work really well together by talking about strengths and weaknesses with, different cars and the different handling characteristics and different driving characteristics as well. So we do work together quite well, and everybody has, they have the brain switched on when it's time to be focused and, focusing on what to do to make all the cars faster. But they're also really good. We had a training camp at the start of the year where all the drivers were involved and all the crew came as well. We trained at the Essendon Football Club and everybody was, really joyful and happy to be there. So there's a really good culture at Prodrive at the moment where everybody's happy to be there and people are getting along well. And that shows, with the results on the track when everybody's so close up the front together on podiums together. That doesn't happen just through coincidence. That happens because everybody treats each other the same. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And looking at the race as a whole, what are your thoughts on the other competitors within the race?
On the other competitors, I think Jamie Whincup and Paul Dumbrell, they don't need to be fast in practice and qualifying to be expected to win. Jamie's been really fast every year, it seems, as soon as Sunday comes. So I don't know if he holds himself back a bit, but he seems to have, really good straight line speed as soon as the race happens, and, he'll be a force to be reckoned with. I think Scotty McLaughlin, he's in that frame of mind that probably Shane was last year when you're leading the championship for the first time. You sort of see that he's sort of happy to take second place as long as he has the key people behind him that he's fighting against in the championship. I think he'll be there or thereabouts. It was interesting just to watch him at Sandown. I think he probably had the speed to challenge Cameron, but I think Cameron, each time he saw Scotty get a bit closer, he pushed it that little bit harder and was able to maintain the gap. But then I sort of saw Scott, and he was just happy to be in second place, I think. So he'll be running a pretty consistent game, but there will be a few, I'd say there'll be a few desperate moves being taken at the start of the race. I'm not sure from who by, but there always seems to be some. It was surprising to see so few safety cars at Sandown after the first one. But, given the fact that we've had 6 red flags already from crashes, I think there'll be a few guys that'll be keen to get their first podium of the year that haven't really had the success yet. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting race.
Yeah, for sure. We can't wait till Sunday. So as far as your goals and expectations in the race, what can you say about them?
For my first Bathurst race, I'll be happy with a top 10. I think that's pretty much where we've been in practice. So top 10 would be great. I think the fact that you can fight up the top 10 as well, that, if you're coming 8th, sometimes at the end of the race, you're bound to get 2 or 3 more positions just through people, getting low on fuel or last lap incidences as well. So it gives you that chance to, bridge into the top 5 or even the podium. So as long as we're sitting in top 10, I think just genuinely, as the race goes on, I'll be pretty pleased with that. And I'm sure we can build onto that going into Gold Coast as well and go a little bit better.
Yeah. No, it's going to be interesting. And how can our listeners keep up to date with all things happening in your world?
Yeah, I've got a pretty strong social media. Following, sort of update people all the time. So type my name, Garry Jacobson, in social media. I'll be able to update you as well on what I'm doing. So, yeah, I'll just go through there. I'm a bus driver most of the time. When I'm not racing the car, I drive a bus and take kids to school at Shepparton, where I live. So,
okay.
It's not all racing. It's the Super 2 drivers in particular. We don't get paid, so you've still got to have a full-time job. And after I've finished driving the bus during the day and drop the kids off at school, I'm a service technician. I service, heavy vehicles. So, yeah, that's what I'm getting up to after this week.
Okay, oh wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I guess he mixes his things up for you.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry
Yeah.
if it's a little bit loud. Qualifying is just starting to ramp up now. If you can hear the engines.
Yeah, I can. No, that's all good. Awesome. All right, well, so before we go, also, anything else you'd like to say to our listeners in terms of the race and the V8 supercars in general?
No, it's just it's a fantastic, following at the moment with supercars and seeing a lot of more people getting involved, friends and family alike. So if you see me at the track, don't hesitate to come and say hello. I'm pretty good to talk to. I'm happy to ask any questions you want. I'm probably at that new stage where I don't really don't get bothered too much like Frosty does. So very, very happy to come and talk to people at Bathurst. So if you're here at the track, come and say good day. And thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Garry, and we wish you all the best for Sunday.
Cheers. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Excellent insight from Garry. It'll be great to follow his progress over the weekend. And for those not aware, Garry and Jason qualified in 8th position in Friday's qualifying session, which sees them through to the top 10 shootout on Saturday to determine pole. They are our two guests for this week. So to watch the Bathurst 1000, for our Australian listeners, tune into Channel 10 on free-to-air television, or for pay TV subscribers, you can also view it on Foxtel on their dedicated 24/7 Bathurst channel on Fox Sports. Thank you for listening, and to our guests Cam Waters and Garry Jacobson for joining us this week. We wish them all the best for the weekend at Bathurst. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and follow us on Twitter to keep up to date with all future episodes. Enjoy the race this weekend. Till next time.